Story 1. Massive rant incoming. Anti-intellectualism. We are raising a generation of people who cannot think for themselves. We are graduating millions of students who cannot read at a fifth-grade level. Many children do not care about their education anymore. They know that the system is failing them, so why should they? Parents are so busy working that they do not even have time to do anything with their kids anymore. They just put them in front of screens. Universities around the world are scrambling to figure out the artificial intelligence problem, in which tens of millions of undergraduate students are cheating their way through every class and graduating with no technical or academic skills. We are actively walking ourselves back into the dark ages. Banning literature that we disagree with, underfunding public libraries causing them to shut down, pulling money out of education, underpaying teachers causing them to leave in large numbers, the list goes on. It is even worse because some people are actively fighting the institutions trying to combat the problem. We have people teaching their children the earth is flat or that vaccinations and, by extension, doctors or healthcare providers are dangerous or evil, or that evolution is a myth created by atheists or that blood is blue. You get the gist. And do not forget that this is all calculated and purposeful. Do you think the rich, all-career politicians in the United States of America are multimillionaires, want people who are educated enough to think and fight for themselves? Absolutely not. When the majority of the country was educated, we ended up with politicians who cared about citizens more than companies, conglomerates, and corporations. Story 2. How full of hate people seem to be. It has always been a thing, but goddamn, I feel like it has gotten so much worse. There is so much hatred everywhere. Story 3. Everyone seems so checked out, like there is an emptiness in people's eyes. More people are driving poorly, texting and driving, using video calls while driving, not looking when switching lanes, and driving either extremely slow or dangerously fast. Story 4. Honestly, the growing numbness. The way people scroll past suffering like it is background noise. How empathy is getting replaced by sarcasm or indifference. That scares me. Not just the chaos, but how easily we adapt to it like it is normal. Story 5. The technology enthusiasts known as the Dark Enlightenment Group want to replace the United States with techno-feudalist city-states. The cabinet, which is incompetent at best and downright evil at worst, will allow these individuals to reshape society in their misguided image. Story 6. The biggest fear for me is that my daughter is going to harm herself over all of this. Before COVID-19, she was just a kid. She didn't know or care about the world, policies, politics, or anything else. Then the pandemic hit, and for her, so did puberty. It was like her brain just activated. With the increased time at home and online during lockdown, she became more informed. Watching the news, TikTok, YouTube. Since 2020, when she was 13 and now turning 18 this year, her mental health has declined. We have a family history of mental illness and have always been proactive about it. But medication, counseling, and exercise only help so much when the world feels like it's falling apart. She sees no hope or future worth living for, and no real way to make meaningful change. She's 17. I have struggled with this for 36 years, and I completely understand where she's coming from. As a mother, I deeply want to fix it. I want her to be happy and hopeful. God damn it. In response to a comment saying, "Sounds like she's overreacting. Please go easy on him," I looked at his profile. He's also a young person active in teen online communities. He spends a lot of time online, plays Dead by Daylight, and mainly uses the killer character, which suggests he tries to appear edgy and may not have many friends. This behavior often indicates someone who chooses to be toxic to get attention. He participates in various horror-themed forums but receives limited engagement, showing he wants to be seen as thoughtful and opinionated but hasn't succeeded yet. After receiving many downvotes, he deleted his comment but continued to argue in replies. Clearly, his online reputation matters more to him than his beliefs, as he relies on upvotes for a sense of power. We have all encountered someone like this before. Instead of being angry at him, feel sorry for him because when he grows out of this, he will have to reflect on his behavior for a long time. If anything, be upset with his parents for not teaching him empathy or how to be likable. Story 7. How hateful the world is right now. People are being placed in actual camps because they came to a new country to improve their lives. Story 8. Gravity. This persistent, crushing drain on life continues. My torn trap hurts. Will it hurt more? Absolutely. Story 9. We suffer from information overload, and it is becoming increasingly difficult to discern good sources of information from bad sources of information. Artificial intelligence is the next step in this evolution. Story 10. The fact that conflicts involving a few individuals have global and nuclear reach, and that world leaders today increasingly resemble old-fashioned dictators. Story 11. The rise of fascism across the world. Most Americans and many people around the world are aware of Donald Trump. However, there is also the alternative for Germany in Germany, the Freedom Party of Austria in Austria, and the National Rally in France. I saw Cabaret in the theater last week. Like, tomorrow belongs to me. It starts out seemingly harmless, but becomes increasingly sinister until the mask falls off completely. Only at that point are millions already dead. Story 12. Things that were adaptive and helped us survive and thrive while we evolved have become maladaptive, interfering with our ability to survive and thrive. I was going to write a long list, but here is perhaps the most important one. The fight-or-flight response, with the addition of freeze, was essential to survival in our evolutionary past. Problems were almost always such that the most important survival action was to release a large amount of adrenaline into the bloodstream to prepare for physical actions like fighting or running away, and to shut down higher cognitive functions because you needed to stop daydreaming or thinking about anything other than the emergency occurring in the present. So when you heard a rustle in the tall grass, your body went into overdrive. You stopped thinking about anything but the simple and almost always physical need to fight or escape. This gave you a better chance of survival than those who did not have this mechanism. The issue is that modern life problems are almost always actively made worse by this same mechanism that was so useful in the past. We have complicated problems where being stressed out and unable to think critically or use our higher cognitive functions completely interferes with our ability to solve those problems. You are taking a test at school and get stressed about it. Your heart races, your body gets tense, and you might perform poorly in a subject you could do well in if you were not stressed. You are trying to make a financial decision. You enter the fight-or-flight response, become less able to think carefully, and make a bad choice. You are watching the news, which intentionally triggers your fight-or-flight response by making you angry or afraid. They play carefully crafted clips and messages repeatedly. You become less able to think carefully and more emotional and stressed, leading you to develop beliefs you would know better than to hold if you had been able to stay calm and carefully consider what was being discussed. This applies greatly when thinking of the biggest issues today: climate change, nuclear war, economic meltdown. These issues are so terrifying that we either consider them and are likely to experience the above problem, or we develop a defense mechanism by simply ignoring them, either by never thinking about them or by actively pretending that important issues do not exist. Story 13. I cannot afford food, and people are complaining about distractions created by Make America Great Again, so they do not think about how they also cannot afford food. Story 14. People believe anything they read just because someone with their same political views said it. Words are losing value, such as trauma. Story 15. Major media outlets are using very soft language to describe the wholesale autocratic takeover of the United States government. They are no longer fueled by telling the truth, but by ensuring their coffers are lined. Story 16. I think people are too focused on exceptions and creating hypotheticals to disagree with everyone. Pointing out exceptions to someone's well-intended statement feels like a new morality. I think it causes helplessness. Well, that advice is not great for 10% of people and 2% of people cannot use it at all, so you are wrong for acting like it is a viable solution for anyone. Story 17. Everyone has become self-involved to the point where I am not even sure if my family loves each other anymore. People move frequently for jobs, so families and friendships do not last long. Everyone is isolated. In-person communities and hobbies are too expensive for most people. Online communities and activities are toxic and also becoming costly. Story 18. One word: greed. I firmly believe that a few decades ago, humanity wanted to give upcoming generations a better world. The silent generation, mostly the baby boomer generation, and every generation after them no longer care. They just want to ensure that they, as individuals, are doing well. It is very sad, and it is only a matter of time until this mentality destroys society as we know it. Story 19. How is anyone supposed to have and raise children while the world is in its current state? I want children, but there is no way I would have them right now. It seems almost unfair to them. Story 20. The fact that I will probably not be able to own anything, and it seems people are only becoming more divided. I do not want to own nothing and also be alone. Story 21. We are on the cusp of creating the avenues, means, and technology capable of making the world better for the average human than ever before. However, we risk being propelled back into the Stone Age because we are too short-sighted and selfish to realize this. We are one or two major events away from wiping the slate clean, and it would be monumentally tragic should that occur. Story 22. People are offloading more and more of their thinking and reasoning to artificial intelligence, needing it to explain and interpret every little thing for them. These systems are incredibly biased and deceptive. Story 23. The general instability. As a person who is relatively young, it feels like every long-term investment, whether financial or career-related, carries a significant amount of risk. Obviously, this varies from person to person, but most of my friends and peers share this fear as well. Story 24. How divided people are. People are harder to deal with than they used to be. Many people are medicated, mentally disturbed, or lack a moral compass. It is a powder keg. Story 25. Conservatives have influenced the United States to support corporate billionaire interests at a time when artificial intelligence is likely to replace any job that does not require manual skills. Without a political group that supports social safety nets, approximately 65% of the workforce may no longer be needed in the next decade. This estimate does not include the potential impact of robots replacing physical labor. It will likely result in economic collapse. Story 26. Climate change, the rise of fascism and authoritarianism, the wealth gap, and the next pandemic are probably not far away. Story 27. Okay, so here's the deal. The Make America Great Again movement scares me. Not in a cartoonish, I'm terrified of Red Hat's way, but in a deeper, gut level something is off here way. It is like being at a family reunion where everyone has suddenly decided that the best path forward is to go backward, and they are really angry about it. And proud. And armed. At first, it was the tone. Not just political disagreement, but simmering anger that seemed to turn into open contempt. For journalists, immigrants, teachers, scientists, even neighbors. It stopped being about policy and started feeling like a loyalty cult, with all dissent punished and all problems blamed on the others. Then came the rewriting of facts, alternative facts, if we are being polite. I watched people I care about start to believe things that were demonstrably false, like the 2020 election was stolen, climate change is a hoax, or that wearing a mask was somehow an act of submission to the deep state. There is a fine line between skepticism and delusion, and we crossed that line like it owed us money. What really scares me, though, is how normalized all of this has become. The casual cruelty, the demonization of the press, the idea that political opponents are not just wrong, but enemies of the state. That is not just politics, that is authoritarianism 101. I studied history. I know how those chapters end. I am scared because I see how effective it has been, how much power you can get just by stoking resentment and repeating lies loudly enough. It is the oldest trick in the book, but it still works. And people I thought would never fall for it, people who taught me to be decent, fair, curious, are all in. So yes, it scares me because it is not just red hats and rallies. It is a movement that has made fear, anger, and nostalgia into a brand. And if we do not pay attention, it will not just reshape politics. It will reshape what we call reality. Story 28. Republicans. I remember when the idea of masked men from federal agencies pulling people off the street without warrants would have the Republicans rioting in the streets. Instead, you are cheering it on. Story 29. People think it is perfectly okay to scream at or hit anybody who offends them in any way or says something that does not align with their views on the topic. This behavior is unacceptable and is becoming increasingly common. Story 30. The corporation's greed knows no bounds. Employees' health? Do not care. Abusing artificial intelligence as soon as possible. Do not care. Wanting profits every single year. Do not care. Fake human resources. Do not care. The list goes on. Story 31. Artificial intelligence and cyber warfare. It is my opinion we are on the verge of the Terminator scenario becoming reality. Story 32. It's hard for me to pin it to one thing, I guess. There is so much, but I used to be proud to be an American. We helped people, built great things, and made our society better. Somewhere along the lines that changed and we started fighting each other. I worry about the world that my children will inherit. I am worried that it will be uninhabitable, dangerous more so than usual, and unforgiving. I do not think we are going the right way as a society, and I am not sure when that changed, maybe after September 11th, 2001. Story 33. Wars. Imagine if all that time, energy, and money went into doing good instead of destroying one another. Story 34. The increasing lack of critical thinking and common sense. For example, just look at how quickly people generalize others for their own agenda, despite it being detrimental to everyone. Story 35. I may not be able to live as who I am. As a transgender man, my rights are being cut, and it is scary. They are trying to erase me. Story 36. I will lose the ability to be myself and the healthcare that gives me my reason to live. For once in my life, I reached a point where I liked being alive and could be myself. Now, it is all being threatened. Story 37. There is a massive amount of debt being taken on, and that bubble has to pop at some point. At the same time, we are going to have a ludicrous number of people who are unemployable through no fault of their own because automation of basic tasks is becoming easier and easier. The technological capabilities of the world today make a surveillance state very attractive and feasible to bad actors. Wealth inequality is absolutely insane, and they want more. I have a sinking dread that those in power are going to start a war to consolidate control. People will join the armed forces simply because it will be the only way to survive with all their debt and no job opportunities. Resistance will be swiftly crushed in the cradle through communication monitoring, censorship, and targeted witch hunts on individuals who may have influence. They will shatter the world, attempt to eliminate anyone who is not useful in the process, and spend a decade rebuilding afterward. This will really be a campaign to solidify their power by politically negotiating with people exhausted by all the death, to create the perfect surveillance state with them at the top. From that moment on, anyone left will be held under the iron thumb of advanced technology to maintain that new world. There will be nothing we can do about it, except pledge our lives as useful slaves or die. Story 38. What scares me is the transition of world leadership to a decaying superpower we are fading into history. For the last 80 years, the United States ruled the planet and was a technological and economic superpower. There is a new world taking shape, and we are not at the helm. Education should have the highest priority. The United States can no longer attract foreign talent. China produces more engineers in 1 year than the United States high school graduates. It is a matter of time. We are a broke nation on many levels. Story 39. Artificial intelligence just did a great job impersonating Marco Rubio, sending texts and voicemails to government officials, some foreign. We are going to keep funding the research because we can learn how to control it. We are walking in the shadows of the digital world. Artificial intelligence was born in it. Story 40. How expensive the world is, and I understand that is not an uncommon complaint. But I literally cannot afford to live. I have worked at the same place for years and have received 2 raises. It is now the highest pay I can get in this area, yet I still cannot afford rent, let alone groceries on top of that. I could work my whole life on this salary and never be able to afford to purchase a home. Story 41. Antibiotic resistance. Diseases are fairly overlooked in the modern world compared to 100 years ago. Antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria would effectively set us back to the 1800s. Story 42. The line about people who cannot think for themselves really hit me. Everything nowadays is so polarized, where people feel they need to align with one position or another, especially in politics in America. People forget that you can support a political party without agreeing with everything they do. People see influencers on social media and let them dictate everything they do and buy without exploring for themselves. There is much more I could say, but this is spot on. Story 43. Seeing so much hate and prejudice scares me. I am afraid that there are people in power who get pleasure from the suffering of others. I have to limit myself from watching the news. It is just too horrible to bear. Story 44. Lack of empathy, human compassion, and understanding of what is morally right and wrong. You should not be told to care about people. Story 45. Lack of empathy and no care or regard for human life. Many people trust anyone except experts and those with years of experience, knowledge, practice, and discipline, including doctors and scientists. There is also a lack of respect, self-respect, and respect towards others. I think we can all admit the younger generation, Generation Alpha, is somewhat entitled and cannot compare to previous generations. Story 46. I am terrified of the thought of rural hospitals collapsing under financial strain and leaving large areas of the population without necessary services. I see a general erosion of safety nets, and it keeps me up at night thinking about how nonprofit organizations can survive an onslaught of requests. If people stop giving because they need to help themselves, where will the money come from to keep helping? Do we just help less? Do we make hard choices that someone like me should not be in charge of making? Do we give up completely? Do I go back to sales and live a soulless existence? This is essential dread sometimes. Story 47. I'll never get a chance to start a career. I'm 33, a military veteran, and left the Army during the COVID-19 pandemic. I then went to graduate school, planning to wait out the storm, but finding a stable job in this market has been very difficult. It feels almost impossible. Furthermore, it feels even more impossible with many companies focusing on artificial intelligence and laying off people to do jobs. I'm starting to conclude that my life may always be like this. Story 48. How much harder it is becoming just to afford to survive. It is the number one reason I do not want children. I do not want them to grow up and struggle like we are. It is scary. Story 49. That many people seem to admire and look up to the absolute worst, selfish, materialistic, money-hungry individuals. Story 50. The rise of the far right globally and how, if left unchecked, it will result in the loss of many freedoms at best and genocides at worst. Story 51. People seem to do things and think in extremes nowadays, whether it is politics or lifestyle choices. It is all or nothing with some people. The healthiest people do things in moderation. Story 52. Rise of artificial intelligence, anti-intellectualism, rampant racism, misogyny, homophobia, the normalization of violence, lack of empathy, and more. Story 53. Some narcissistic pedophile with dementia has his own private army of masked goons, a Supreme Court of the United States that enables his every executive order whim, and a legislative majority with no balance of power and access to nuclear weapons. Story 54. How all the world governments are just letting climate change happen and are waiting for technology to improve to solve it, without regard for the millions of people who will be affected and die from the extreme weather that will become catastrophic. All because they make money from fossil fuels and have the resources to ride out the disasters. This situation keeps me up at night sometimes. I am lucky to have been born in a climate haven area. We will still be affected, but I am landlocked, so I do not have a coast or earthquakes to worry about. Mostly just heat and rain, which can still be deadly. With everything else going on, it will be hard to focus on survival when everyone is trying to survive with a lack of money, food, and healthcare. Story 55. The fact that so many Americans blindly follow Donald Trump scared me. They learned nothing from World War II, and it is disturbing. Story 56. Climate change-induced ecological collapse is expected within a decade or less. The rise of fascism cannot be ignored, as people become more desperate due to late-stage capitalism having exploited the citizens of the world. Story 57. I cannot choose one. There are two: first, climate change; second, nuclear, biological, and chemical weapons of mass destruction. Story 58. The rise of fascism in America and around the world is concerning. Nothing will improve as long as they remain in power. This situation is worsened by climate change and the fascists' outright refusal to address it. Even liberals have not been effective on this issue. We will see increasingly severe events such as California wildfires and Texas flash floods, which will kill more people and cost billions, potentially trillions of dollars in damages. This happens while oil companies profit and coal miners dig holes in the ground, breathing in toxic dust that can cause cancer by age 50. Story 59. How easily some can be convinced that other people are not human. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender individuals, immigrants, and people with different political or personal views. Story 60. Various events happening around the world, which we are all witnessing and know will be recorded in history books, are being allowed to occur without any action taken. The question will be asked in the future, as it was in the past, why did you not do anything? Complacency driven by financial gain is prevailing, leading to harrowing consequences. Story 61. The major lack of empathy and a general desire to help others and improve a situation is evident. I see a lot of self-centered behavior being demonstrated, and it makes me sad. All I can do is focus on the person I have created and make them as good as possible. Story 62. Future pandemic and Israel-Palestine dividing countries internally and acting as a catalyst for World War III. Story 63. For me, how close we are to a full-scale world war is concerning, and most countries are not prepared, especially with the cost of living and health issues. I would say we are already in World War III, but the majority of people do not want to admit that. Story 64. Those in charge are acting on whim, delusion, and disinformation to accelerate the destruction of our economy, so that our right-wing white Christian nationalist country can exploit poor people and their children in fields and industrial slaughterhouses, eliminate undesirables without notice, and reduce us to a church-based crowdfunding economy. Story 65. Even the remotest possibility of World War III happening concerns me. I do not want our soldiers sent off to that conflict, nor do I want people drafted and forcibly taken away from their livelihoods. Story 66. Microplastics. We could solve every other issue if we just got together, but microplastics are in our cells now. Story 67. The mind virus of extreme pessimism and negativity has severely infected people across the world through social media, and it is spreading uncontrollably. This mind virus negatively biases every person's perception of the world, affecting their attitude toward everything and everyone. As a result, many people are fearful and hateful without understanding why, as they are unaware victims of this mind virus. To combat this, ask yourself, is what I am seeing or reading actually true, or just designed to appear true? Be very cautious with memes, as they can easily bypass many mental checks of the truth. Story 68. Economics has become a science and the economy a religion, yet it is only getting worse for the majority of us as time passes. Story 69. Having to take a test tomorrow. I don't get wrapped up in what is going on out of my control. 90% of the stuff out there is nonsense anyway. I am going to live my life and not get caught up in all the negative media that we are fed every single day. Story 70. The ocean, the cleaner of the water and air, is still getting polluted, and we do not clean it up. We even pump sewage into it. Australia has huge deserts that would be a much better filter for the waste and runoff from roads and farms. It is too expensive to pump it there. Fish are dying. Methamphetamine abuse is a serious problem in Australia as well. Story 71. There are many excellent detailed answers here that I agree with. At a high level, I fear the same mistakes made between the First and Second World Wars are being repeated, except militaries are significantly better at killing people now. I am afraid of World War III. Story 72. What some US states care about is that women can have a baby, while taking away things like Medicare and lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer or questioning, intersex, asexual, and other sexual orientations and gender identities rights. There is much more as well. Story 73. The rise of conspiracy theorists and their refusal to accept anything other than their perception of reality is concerning. They often have a fear of chemicals, doctors, and medical science in general. However, their mistrust does not stop there. It extends to the environment, money, taxes, and historical events such as the Holocaust. They hold very strange theories about many topics, with a worryingly long list of disputed facts originally supported by evidence. These individuals are often influenced by someone with a following who has introduced new misleading information. Their relentless efforts to change people's minds through force, repetition, and emotional exhaustion are a serious concern. Story 74. To preface, this statement is not about everyone. It is just about some of the changes I have seen in our society. Living in a society where artificial intelligence is overly powerful and easily accessible to the public, too much reliance on technology has affected our society to the point where many do not know certain basic social, critical thinking, and physical skills. Story 75. I'm concerned that I only have 2 beers left right now, but I have some gin, so it's all good. One thing you need to remember: absolutely nothing you say or do is going to cause any change whatsoever. Story 76. Greed and capitalism influence people's behavior. I also believe that religion discourages people from questioning the government and societal structure. Story 77. The fact that most people lack community and social dynamics are being disrupted because of technology. Story 78. Artificial intelligence and no chance for ordinary people to have a somewhat purposeful and decent life, like the ability to earn for a house by being a hard worker and sometimes working overtime. Young people graduate but have no prospects later. Nobody needs you. The only way to change it is by starting your own business and working hard. But that is also not a guarantee. That is why it is called risk. You will only hear and read about those who become successful. You will never read about those sleeping under bridges or living with their parents to fix what did not work out. Story 79. Honestly, the fact that basic things like healthcare, housing, and food feel harder to afford than ever. Story 80. Climate change, habitat destruction, pollution in the air and water, loss of Earth's animals, plants, and insects. Extinction caused by us is an abomination. We are no more special than any other life. This planet could be the Garden of Eden for everyone. Could be. Story 81. I am afraid that I will be operated on by someone who used artificial intelligence to get their degree, and I will die because of how unqualified and uneducated they are. Story 82. The lack of nuance and understanding of different perspectives. The uncontrollable urge to demonize and hate people who do not believe what you do. Story 83. Everything is going so well that people feel the need to fight over the smallest things. 20 years ago, we were so distracted by real problems that we did not have time to fight over what they do these days. Story 84. Public education is under attack. Not because it is failing, but because it is powerful. When a community has free, accessible, high-quality schools, it uplifts every child, every family, and every future. What is happening right now is not about parental choice or curriculum concerns. It is about defunding, discrediting, and dismantling the very system that gave generations a chance to rise. Good teachers are leaving. Resources are being stripped away. Misinformation is being spread. While our schools fight to stay open, others profit from division. Public education is the heart of a free society. When it is under attack, so is democracy. Support your local schools. Stand up for teachers. Speak truth. All of our children are worth it. Story 85. Water. I saw an article yesterday starting some false claims about how damming water is affecting the poles. After years of the very wealthy buying land with the largest water reserves, water is being wasted. It feels like the propaganda is beginning to reduce water access. I am terrified that water will be used to control everything and that everyone will be forced to comply. Story 86. L'agriculture intensive et ses effets négatifs. Le pire, c'est qu'aucun gouvernement ne s'en préoccupe. Mais dans 30 ans, quand on aura presque plus de sols fertiles à cause des pratiques d'agriculture intensive, comment nourrir plus de 8 milliards d'êtres humains, et sûrement plus d'ici là? Pour donner un chiffre, selon l'Organisation des Nations Unies pour l'alimentation et l'agriculture, on perd 24 milliards de sols fertiles par an. Story 87. Social media. People expressing blatant racism, sexism, anti-Semitism, and much more, garnering many likes and support. These are not troll accounts, but real people saying these things. Someone you might walk past on the street. Story 88. Ever since I was a child, I have been scared of the fact that the universe will continue to exist without me. It would make more sense if time stopped or ended the moment I die, but no. The people I know will just keep living without me. Eventually, everyone I have ever known will die, and I will become completely irrelevant. Then humanity itself will die out, and what then? This is still my biggest fear about the world. Story 89. Nothing really. Life has been pretty great for me so far. My mother-in-law isn't handling things well. My wife and I have people over on Saturdays as we have a pool. My mother-in-law loves to float around in a pool chair drinking a mojito while trying to explain how we are living in The Handmaid's Tale. I think some people simply don't have a motive or direction in life, no sense of purpose or goals, so they simply go with the latest craze even if they don't know what it actually means. Story 90. Kindness and empathy are sometimes seen and portrayed as bad, evil, and weak by a small minority, but they are slowly being adopted as a way to be. Story 91. The fact that it could have been different, could have been better. We had the chance for it to be better, and yet here we are. Story 92. The inaction of most of the Earth's population is evident. Everyone is a strong keyboard warrior online, but in real life, only a few truly stand up and take action against wrongdoing. As a result, we are being manipulated by our governments and companies alike. We are a joke when it comes to banding together, more so than in the past. Story 93. The fact that white British people will be a minority in their own country in 2 decades and the probable civil war that will ensue. Story 94. Seeing many world leaders angering others is enough to assume World War III. I have a guess on who is fighting whom, but there will be racism. Story 95. The lack of genuine love people have for each other and the world around them leads to so much hate and indifference nowadays. Story 96. When I was a child, I used to think being intelligent meant becoming wealthy and successful. I was wrong. Story 97. The climate is beyond all the worst-case predictions. Terrible governments around the world are abandoning green policies at our most critical last-chance moment, triggering a feedback loop. The Earth will soon be a difficult place to survive. Story 98. I live in the United States. My family is from Southern Europe and North Africa. I have brown skin. My biggest fear is being arrested and detained because of the way I look. Immigration and customs enforcement and the police are racially profiling all non-white people, especially anyone they perceive to be Hispanic. They are abducting innocent people. It is terrifying. I am terrified for anyone who is not white here in the United States. We are in a situation similar to 1930s Germany. We are getting a glimpse of what is to come. I am scared that people will be abducted in the middle of the night or executed in public. Immigration and customs enforcement is acting like the secret police. I wish I could wave a magic wand and make all this evil disappear. I wish someone would come and save us, but I know that is not going to happen. We have to save ourselves. I really wish someone would tell me everything is going to be okay. But I know it is not, at least not anytime soon. For anyone who does not live here, please do not think all of us voted for Donald Trump. Most of us are horrified by what he is doing and allowing. The United States is deteriorating right before our eyes. Story 99. Complacency. People in the United States seem fully resigned to living in this carefully constructed trap where your credit score is punished for missing a payment and also punished for paying it off early. This reflects the divide between rich and poor, and nobody cares. As long as they can keep mindlessly consuming, they do not care. Until suddenly they need something and cannot have it because consumption is forced to slow. Then they will turn into complaining individuals who cannot believe that 85 years of relentless consumerism had an end date. Story 100. The King of Kings will be returning soon. The Bible continues to unfold daily. So everyone get ready. You are either for the Lord Jesus or against him. There is no in-between. Story 101. The current state of things. Wars, floods, earthquakes, disasters, and plane crashes. The year 2025 is truly challenging. Story 102. This is not necessarily an immediate issue, but it is related to current events. The problem is that bad people gain power more easily because they are more willing to stoop to low tactics than good people. The morals that should make people good leaders often prevent them from winning because their unethical opponents do not hesitate to cheat or use underhanded methods. Story 103. Artificial intelligence is supposed to make our lives easier and take care of mundane tasks, not take our jobs away. Story 104. The fact that people only speak of race, ethnicity, or religion is a bad approach. It makes me feel scared for the future. Story 105. People are becoming too indifferent and insensitive to everything. Right now, I feel like the world is heading into a very troubling time. I know every generation believes the world will end with them or envisions a dystopian scenario for what might come. But I think we are facing something particularly serious, and not in a positive way. Story 106. How dangerous even my small town has become over the last few years. We have more violent crime than ever before, and no one has the courage to say who the culprits are for fear of being called names. Story 107. That is a hard one to pick. Climate change, wars, cost of living, artificial intelligence, and more. But ultimately, everything always comes back to the ones who cause all of this. The rich billionaires. The greed they have is staggering. For example, they have so much wealth it cannot be spent in more than 20 lifetimes, so why keep trying to gain more? What purpose is there in wanting money you cannot spend? Well, you can, but you choose not to spend it. You just hoard it while watching everyone else suffer. People praise these individuals, call them role models, and aspire to be like them. Why? They are literally pure evil. They could end world hunger and poverty, put the entire world on green energy, and set us on the right track against climate change, actually giving humanity a chance. Yet they still choose not to do any of that. Instead, they do their absolute best to avoid paying taxes, which would make zero difference to their lifestyle. By avoiding taxes, they are actually doing more harm. These people will spend billions to control governments, control media, and control the opposing side, such as companies and charities that want to prevent climate change. They take so much power. They fuel the hate. They control both sides of the government and make you feel like voting for the other side might bring change. But it never will. When you find out something is bad for you, like smoking or certain foods, they fund misinformation to make you believe it is perfectly fine. The same people who keep the world divided are the ones funding both the left and the right, keeping us blaming each other, shifting blame for everything wrong onto the poor, disabled, vulnerable, and immigrants. They fund the wars on both sides just so they can make more money. Literally, if billionaires did not exist, the world would be a much better place. There is absolutely nothing we can do about them either. Story 108. What scares me the most is the people who think they know more than actual professionals do. I work in the medical research field, and I have seen children and adults alike killed or harmed profoundly by the increase of people who feel like they know better than doctors who have dedicated their lives to treating and hopefully preventing disease. The hubris and unfounded confidence is just astounding. Story 109. The rise of authoritarian fascism and climate denialism coincides with the increasing power of artificial intelligence and technology. We have the potential to create or witness worse atrocities than have ever occurred in human history. Humans continue to drive the extinction of many animal species and could cause our own extinction. Story 110. The push for artificial intelligence and its general acceptance concerns me. I feel we will certainly lose our sense of purpose. I grew up in the 1990s when everything had a purpose. Taking good pictures required a camera, and developing them was a skill in itself. There were steps required for everything, which made processes longer, but it felt like truly living. You spoke to people and learned things about places, secrets to get by, and then you passed that knowledge on. For me, that was culture, and it was in everything. Video games, art, collecting music on CD or vinyl, unique objects from overseas that you had to go and find. Now, everything is so button-clickable that nothing means much. It makes me feel like our doom is near internally. Story 111. Oh God. There is so much. So much. I don't even know where to start. I don't want to just repeat what the top comments have said, though, so I have to say artificial intelligence and just how much people are trying to have it do. Artificial intelligence does have its merits in some fields, but as soon as we started getting it to try and produce artworks and replace the jobs of real people, that's when it started getting scary. Not so much in a science fiction robots are going to replace and overtake human society kind of way, but in a humanity feels doomed to eventually become completely reliant on artificial intelligence and stop doing things for themselves kind of way. The thought of that kind of future feels so bleak. Story 112. This is not a rant. It is an unironic response. Skip to the summary if it is too much. The rapid collapse of liberal movements across the United States, combined with growing resistance outside the country and minor elements holding on here, makes me both glad to watch it die but also genuinely afraid of what will happen when they realize the world is about to revert to conditions similar to 1999 for most of us. Events like the massive riots in Los Angeles and increasing political polarization on both sides should make anyone realize that some kind of open rebellion is imminent. I grew up in Detroit, where the riot in my mother's generation changed the city completely, and we never really recovered. Los Angeles was nowhere near as violent or extreme but was still close to breaking point. After the Detroit riots, my mother told me, and I can confirm from pictures, that the city looked like London after the Blitz, with some buildings reduced to skeletal frames burned to the ground. The deaths and economic devastation meant the city never fully recovered. Previously, it had a population of 2 million people, and now it has 600,000. After seeing the George Floyd protests and riots, and I still do not understand how Antifa and Black Lives Matter are not considered terrorist groups, and the recent Los Angeles riots, plus people shooting at immigration and customs enforcement agents, I can foresee at least a minor uprising or secession soon. Frankly, it is inevitable now. The world, including the United States, operated on what I can only describe as a blindly utopian ideology that is slowly fading. This amounted to a real-life version of the lyrics to the song Baby. A person or civilization left in near total shock because a worldview they clung to as literal truth has proven to be a pipe dream at best and is now gone or fading. They are unable to grasp what is happening. Concepts like openly embracing globalism, creating borderless non-nations that only exist on maps, removing barriers for any gender or sexuality extremes even if detrimental to society, and fumbling attempts at classless societies. Listen to the "Now I'm All Gone" part of the song and imagine illegal immigrants and liberals singing that. Summary: liberalism is dying, and I am certain it will lead to civil war. Source: Human History. Anyone who thinks this cannot happen because of jets and tanks shows a shocking lack of knowledge about warfare and secession and should educate themselves. Or just ask the Taliban, who drove us out of Kabul and are now recognized as the legitimate government in Afghanistan. Story 113. Lack of education. Lack of discipline. Lack of respect. Lack of emotion. Lack of humanity. Lack of money in the right places. Lack of commitment. Lack of understanding. Lack of equality. Lack of acceptance. Humans scare me the most about the world right now. I also dislike how kids these days have made up meaningless words like giant, skibbity, and riz. I really dislike how wearing very revealing clothes has become normalized. I used to understand the idea of, if you see it that way, you're the problem in relation to how kids looked and acted. But these days, it is common to see tiny skirts on 10-year-olds and even babies, tiny tops, and tight clothing everywhere. I do not want to see that everywhere I go. I am the oldest girl of 3 sisters and have to watch my teenage sisters dress and act this way because it is considered normal and cool right now. We are meant to rely on future generations, but I only see things going downhill fast for many reasons. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.